Hi Math 6-5. This is lesson 109, which is located on page 564 of your textbook and is scheduled for Thursday, April 9th. As a reminder, week 10 homework, which is this lesson, and lesson 106, 107, 108, 109, 110, investigation 11, that homework is all due Monday, April 13th. So lesson 109, time test. I forgot to tell you about your time test. Let me write it up here. Time test for today is time test J, which is on page 194 of your test and worksheet book. Okay, test J. So if you have not done that, please take time to go do that. All right, so let's get started with lesson 109. It is multiplying decimals. And so our first example that we're gonna learn about multiplying decimals on here, you'll see I've written the decimal multiplication problem, 1/10 times 1/10. And I've also written it as a fraction multiplication problem, 1/10 times 1/10, because these are equal. This decimal number is equal to the fraction 1/10, and this decimal number is equal to the fraction 1/10. So we've multiplied fractions before, so I thought we'd start with something we're familiar with. So let's start there. 1 times 1 is 1, and 10 times 10 is 100. So our answer there is 1/100th when we multiply the fraction. So let's go and work on the decimals and understand those and see if we get the same answer. We should. So 1/10. Now with multiplying decimals, it is different than it was when we when we added and subtracted our decimals. When we added and subtracted our decimals, we had to be very careful to line up our decimals. When you're multiplying with your decimals, you don't have to line those up. This problem will line up, but it does not have to. And I'll show you some of those. Okay, so, excuse me. So 1 times 1 is 1. 1 times 0 is 0. Okay, and I could continue on and put my placeholder 0. 0 times 1 is 0, and 0 times 0 is 0. Okay? Then I add. Notice I've multiplied just like I would if these were whole numbers. I didn't pay attention to any of the decimal stuff. 1 plus 0 is 1, 0 plus 0 is 0, and 0. Okay? Now I have this number as my answer, and I have to determine how many decimal places I need. The way you determine in a multiplying decimals how many decimal places you need in your answer is you look back to the numbers that you multiplied. And you see how many decimal places were in the first number I multiplied. And there were 1 decimal place. Okay? How many decimal places were in the second number I multiplied? And there was 1 decimal place. And then you add that together to determine how many total decimal places you'll need, which is 2 decimal places. I added those, okay? So 1 decimal place there plus 1 decimal place there is 2 decimal places total. So then I come down here to my number that I got as my answer, and I put in 1, 2 decimal places. So I'll rewrite that so it'll be clearer to see that I have 2 decimal places in my answer. I moved my decimal 2 places in. And so this number, when I read it, is 1/100th. Okay? And when I look back to my answer we got on our fraction earlier, it was also 1/100th. So our answers match up. Okay? So moving on to another example, we have 15/100ths times 9/10ths. So this one will be an example where You do not have to line up those decimal points like you did when you added and subtracted decimals. You can just write your problem vertically. So I will do that. 15 hundredths times, and I'm just placing my numbers vertically, okay? So 9 times 5 is 45. Carry forward my 4. 9 times 1 is 9, plus that 4 is 13. Carry forward my 1. 9 times 0 is 0, plus the 1 is 1. Put my placeholder. If you want to go the next level, you can do that. Put a placeholder, and 0 times 5 is 0, 0 times 1 is 0, 0 times 0 is 0. Okay, so you really didn't have to do this layer if you didn't want to. But I'll go ahead and do it for those of you that want to. Okay, and then I just added. All right, now I need to determine how many decimal places do I need in this answer. So up here, I look to my original number I multiplied, 15 hundredths, has 2 decimal places. And 9 tenths has 1 decimal place. Remember, I don't know that I've said it this video, but just as a reminder, decimal places are the amount of digits to the right of the decimal. Okay, so that's what I'm counting. Let me go back up on this one. Here's the decimal. To the right of it, there's 1 digit. Here's this decimal. To the right of it, there's 1 digit. So that's where I get my 1 decimal place from. Down here, here's my decimal. There's 2 digits, a 1 and a 5, it's 2 digits, so there's 2 decimal places. Here, I have to the right of the decimal, just a 9, so I have 1 digit, so I have 1 decimal place to the right of the decimal. So total in my answer, add those up, and I'm gonna need 3. So again, I'll start from out here, and I'll count in 1, 2, 3. So my answer is 135 thousandths. Okay, some of you might have been able to do that mentally if you know what 15 times 9 is, but that one's a little bit of a little more challenging for a mental problem. Down here we have some problems that could be done mentally. They don't have to be, but they could be. So let's look at this first one here. We have 6 tenths times 3. So if I wanted to do this one mentally, the way I would do it is look at it and like it was whole numbers. Get rid of that decimal, don't think about it right now. We're not getting rid of it, we're just putting it away in our mind for now. And just make this problem 6 times 3, which I know is 18. Okay, so I've got that, but I do have a decimal that I have to deal with. So I need to determine how many decimal places I need in my answer. So I look to my first number, and there is 1 decimal place there. My second number, there's 0 decimal places there. So I'm gonna only need 1 decimal place. So I can move in my decimal, and I don't have to draw the little loops. I can just place it there if I want, or I can draw the loops. Whatever is easiest to understand, and know that my answer is 1 8/10. Okay? Another one that can be done mentally is 1 2/10 times 2. Again, you do not have to do these mentally. Please don't feel that I'm making you do them mentally. If you want to work them out, please work them out. I'm showing them mentally because I know that there are some people in our class who will want to do this mentally, and that's okay. And if I know there are some people in our class who will want to work it out all the way, and that's okay too, because I've showed you how to work it out all the way up here. So I'm showing you the mental piece down here. And I'm good with either one that makes you understand it and get to the right answer, whatever you're most comfortable with. Okay, back to this problem. 1 2/10 times 2. Well, if I look again, pretend that decimal's not there, and look at it as whole numbers. So 12 times 2, I know, is 24. Okay? Again, I'm gonna go, and I know I do have a decimal. Now I'm gonna deal with that decimal that I pretended wasn't there. And I know I have 1 decimal place there, and I have 0 decimal places there, because I have nothing. Remember, there's even though we don't write it, there is a decimal point there. And so even though we don't write it, it is there, but there are no digits to the right of that decimal point, so that's why it's 0. So I know I'm gonna have a total of 1 decimal place to the right of my decimal. So I'm gonna bring in my decimal to here, okay? And so my answer will be 2 4/10. Okay, so the reason that I do this little loop is until I bring my decimal in, this number has 0 decimal places. But I've determined I have to do 1, so I have to bring it in 1 space so that my number will have 1 decimal place, okay? Like I said, you don't have to draw the loops, but if they help you, please do. Okay, so that is what lesson 109 is about. I was gonna run through and look at your practice problems are here on page 566, right here. You'll see there are problems like all the examples we did. When you get down to letter I, you may say, wait a minute, she didn't do a problem like that. But I did, we just didn't call it a comparison problem. So let's look back at the one I did like that. So you have, on this problem, 3/10 times 3/10, and it wants you to compare that to 3/10 times 3/10. So remember, when we compare, it's either going to be greater than, less than, or equal to. If we look back at our very first problem we did 1/10 times 1/10 compared to 1/10 the fraction times 1/10 the fraction, and we got 1/100th, or excuse me, I said that wrong, 1/100th for the fraction. And when we did the decimal multiplied by out, we got 1/100th for the decimal. So had we compared these, we would have said they were equal, okay? So even though we didn't do it as a comparison problem, we did compare our answers, which is what this problem really is asking you to do. It's asking you to just compare the answers and determine what it is. When you get to J, the area of a square, remember the area of a square, the 4 sides of a square are all equal length. So you will take one side and multiply it times 4. Remember though, no, excuse me, no, that's perimeter. You will take length, which is one side, times width, which is the same number, another side. So you'll multiply those together. And so in area, you're multiplying centimeters times centimeters. So be sure that when you get your final number as an answer, that your units are in centimeters squared. If it had asked for perimeter, which is what I told you the first time, you would multiply this times 4. But since it asked for area, you're multiplying 8/10 of a centimeter, the length, 8/10 of a centimeter, times the width of 8/10 of a centimeter. So there will be a video coming for lesson 110, excuse me, 110 is our next lesson. We have about 11 lessons left, guys. It's going really fast. I hope you're doing good.